sitting on hurting officer. So rot wealth sitting on hurting officer would also be considered to be negative, inauspicious, because rot wealth produces hurting officer. So when rot wealth produces hurting officer, it will also pushes the hurting officer more towards the negative traits. And hurting officer are those who disregard rules, violate laws, experience personal social downfall. Therefore, again, the thing about being a Karen. And so, rot wealth is a party animal. But when party animal sits on a rebellious, outgoing performer, and that may also represent something that can be unpleasant, something that create great disturbance for the neighbors. Therefore, it also indicates impulsiveness and also indicates recklessness and so on. And so it will also normally consider that both rot wealth and hurting officer disregard the law. As they disregard the law, that would also be somewhat negative the same. Okay, rot wealth sitting on eating God. Now, the one thing that we would sooner learn, especially when we come to eating God is money-making God. Eating God is the real wealth star. Not really your direct wealth or indirect wealth, but eating God. And therefore, eating God weakens the rot wealth. So when rot wealth sits on eating God, and eating God weakens the rot wealth. So eating God can also, in a way, mitigate the negative aspects of the rot wealth. Therefore, here we will consider that eating God is auspicious. And to use the word only auspicious pairing, as you may come soon that after our discussion for so many, we find that this is negative. This is now finally positive, a positive part. So combined together, what does it mean? It may mean lucky, lucky in money, unexpected opportunities in wealth. Alright, so if you are a Yewood Day Master, what would be your rot wealth? Chia. And what would be your eating God? If you're a Chia, so therefore your eating God would be fire, horse. So maybe horse. Therefore it could be a horse in that sense. Therefore is also a very nice pillar, a very good pillar to have. So sometimes when we look into today we look into the 10 gods, rot wealth sitting on eating God. But when you look into the pillar itself can also tell you whether it's a nice pillar to be on as well, something like that. Therefore, this would be very good, very positive and comfortable material life that you have, because eating God eats a lot. It's happy, it's the fine life, and therefore extremely auspicious and so on. Because in a way, eating God cherish the finer things in life. So if you're a party animal sitting on fine dining, you can also say that it's something like a party animal sitting on fine dining. So party animal sitting on fine dining is a party that is in a fine dining environment, therefore rich and prosperous, shareholder, partners kind of environment, celebrating the successful venture or investment and so on. Therefore, rot wealth sitting on eating God gives you an auspicious reading. And so when we draw out the pillars for divinity, for reading for luck, this is a very good one. And of all the 10 rot wealth, finally we find something that is more positive than whatnot, and also representing that rot wealth strengthening the eating god signifies the presence of noble people that you find continuous support. And furthermore, as we can see that rock wealth sitting on eating god is a conduit. Rock wealth sitting on eating god is a conduit between the day master and wealth. Because in a way, rock wealth produces eating god produces wealth. Therefore, there's a harmonious flow. The pillar becomes a conduit, becomes a facilitator to make money, to flow the money to people. Therefore, that's where the rock wealth sitting on eating god is positive. Okay, without saying, I think we'll keep this for things that are already very obvious. Rock wealth sitting on rock wealth would be terribly violent, therefore negative and violent. Of all the 60 pillars, this would be negative, and the problem is, of course, that there is a drawn affinity. There's a drawn affinity to rock wealth sitting on rock wealth. Therefore, that is your rock wealth good blade. So it will be very crucial to remind once again the same thing that was discussed last week and also was shown, that rock wealth sitting on rock wealth is rock wealth good blade, and this would represent people to avoid at all costs. Now, and to use the word people to avoid, indicating that there is a need to avoid. There's a need to avoid. Now, if you were to advise a young person, a young man, you try to advise a young man who has fallen in love with a girl, and then the girl has this pillar, and you now would like to advise a young man who has fallen in love to stay away. That is not going to be an easy task. Therefore, that's where the need comes into it. Now, if it is fan yin or fu yin, in fact, there's very little need for you to give a warning. If it's fan yin, fu yin, people would volunteer to avoid. You would voluntarily avoid, because it's common sense to avoid negative elements. But rock wealth sitting on gold blade, talk is cheap, but there's a drawn affinity, because there's a strong feeling of wanting to come together. Imagine you're trying to explain to somebody cryptocurrency is not for you, but the person is drawn to the potential of making big money, fast money. So that's drawn towards it. So that drawing becomes addictive. It becomes something that is it. Or even like father or spouses that suffers from illnesses, loneliness, and so on. Therefore, that is the kind of reading that we have. But generally, the outcome would be negative. The outcome would always be something that is not positive. Alright, so quite a lot has been said about this, as it is. Now next, we also take a look at rock wealth sitting on friend star. So rock wealth sitting on friend star can only occur in these two pillars. So there's only these two pillars that you can occur, because fire on fire, and so on. So the rest all don't really wrap into this. So rock wealth sitting on rock wealth sitting on friend star, likewise is the same. This is also inauspicious pairing, and it's a very it is a contradiction because of the different polarity in the yin and yang, and therefore it will also dealt to be inauspicious, especially due to dealing with siblings and relative. And therefore, normally, this pillar is more internal, more on family, more on family-related issues, more on families-related issues. And usually, when reading, Rockwell sitting on Friend Star would be somebody who doesn't really listen to spouse, don't really follow the spouse. This person tends to be more of a narcissistic, tends to be more of a party animal that tries to go out at night, come back very late, and tends to prefer the company of friends rather than family, in that sense. And therefore, that may create the kind of inauspicious pillar for the particular person. Alright, so this would be how we look into the Rockwell sitting on Friend Star. Now here we have a Malaysian tycoon from passed on quite recently. So we see the manifestation. Where do we find Rockwell sitting on Friend Star? So we find the Rockwell sitting on the Friend Star onto the year pillar. And here we find that the late Robert Koch is a Renwater day master. Renwater born in autumn, very strong and rooted in the Friend Star. Therefore, this pillar tends to exert its outgoing nature. From the facade, and also, of course, thanks to dedicate his life outside the family. That means, and of course, for an entrepreneur, for a businessman, that may be favorable. That can be, seems to be something that's needed to be a successful business person. I mean, to be a tycoon, to be a serious business person, you really need to be all out, there in the business world all the time, dedicating time. If you want to spend time with the family, you want to have a work-life balance, that's fine. It's just that that will make what a tycoon could achieve in a certain way. Alright, but of course, family issues will always be there. So normally we find that the pillar is very suitable for entrepreneurs, for tycoons, for those who would put in 18 hours of their day out in the office, socializing at night to build, to continue to do business. That kind of character can be observed here as well. Alright, so there you go. This would be all about the Rockwell sitting on each of the 10 elements. And I make a bit of a mistake. I did not record the first part of this sharing, so the recording will only be very short for today, only about 13 minutes. Apologize for that. I'll see whether if I have time, I will try to re-record this again in future. Alright, so that's it for tonight. Thank you. So I will see you next week for a new element then. Thank you. Good night.